This is my 1993 Kawasaki KLE500. A few bits and bobs done to this bike. When I bought it, it was in matte black with a horrible sort of cracked effect where the paint had reacted for whatever reason. So I repainted most of the bike, took it all apart, swing arm off, pretty much everything off bar the front end and the engine out, and repainted it all. This really cool bike this is. Just a quick review essentially of these bikes, and if you're thinking about buying one, what are the common issues with this bike. So since I've had this bike, as I say, I've repainted it, done a bit of a graphics get up on it. I use this bike for green laning. I don't commute on a bike anymore, and yeah, obviously it's a 200 kilo bike thereabouts. Ignore the mismatch handguards, talk about that in a minute, but yeah, it's a 200 kilo bike. It's on Mitas E09 tyres at the moment. These tyres are amazing in the mud. Like, I've taken this bike across sort of moderate green lanes really. Obviously you've got no limitations with a bike like this, you know, they're not, it has stock front springs, but it's lifted 50mm on the rear, and has this particular bike I fitted a aftermarket rear shock to, which makes a world of difference, stiffens it up a bit. The original shock's really undersprung, the front's still quite undersprung, but it's acceptable for you know, road and trail. It's never going to climb up any rocky mountains, but obviously it's never what this bike was made to do anyway. So I've taken this bike through ruts, mud, really thick mud. I've just literally washed it off after coming back from green laning in Shropshire. This bike's surprisingly capable with the right tyres on it. Today I went through frozen 1.5 deep puddles on green lanes, really thick claggy mud, gravel, bit of ice. It's currently January at the moment, and the bike on the right tyres is easily able to plough through all of that, no issues whatsoever. I have dropped it a couple of times. I dropped it on a rocky gravel incline, which resulted in me smashing off the front brake lever, bending the handlebars, scuffing stuff up. So I'll talk about what I've done to this bike now anyway since then. So this bike has a Kurbis handguards on, a Kurbis Factory X. It has currently got a really cheap handguard this side. I'm waiting for, with this bike you have to use a spacer, about 30-40mm spacer, with the Kurbis handguards, otherwise it fouls on the clutch lever. I've also fitted these shorty CNC levers, which are really nice. What else have I done to it? So it's on Mitas tyres, as I say. These tyres really good in the mud. Good road performance up to about 60-65 miles an hour. 70 and above they start to get a little bit what's the right word, unsettled is the right word. As I say, the bike's been through it really. As you can see, it's got plenty of battle scars to prove, but it looks really good, you know. But I'm sure in a 6 months time from when this video is made, the bike will have plenty more battle scars. I fit these heat crash bars, so they're pretty sturdy. Obviously protect your fairings if the worst should happen. It's like an interconnecting bar that goes in between the two, and they bolt onto the frame, and they're really solid. Today I was going through a really icy, about, as I say, foot deep, 1.5 feet deep bit of water, and had to let go of the bike, lost traction, and the bars, yeah, no scratches whatsoever. They were leant up against a sort of embankment while I picked the bike up, no problems whatsoever. This bike's got a power bronze screen on it, power bronze tool screen, which is sort of spaced out to fit. Looks really good, I think. The bars, the original bars, nothing wrong with the original bars, but they're solid. On the ends, I don't know if they're sort of like, they're probably hollow, but their ends were solid. So I fit this set of factory image racing bars. They're really strong actually. They've been through some abuse since they've been fitted, and work really well. But it's got a quad lock on it. Couldn't recommend this foam mount enough, really. Was really pleasantly surprised when I got that quad lock how effective they are. So it's currently got a KTM, I think it's a 250 EXC exhaust. I basically it had a cheap Chinese exhaust when I bought the bike, and the previous owner had cut the pipe really close to where the bend is, so I was struggling to get any sort of aftermarket exhaust on. So what I did in the end was cut the pipe back, fitted a Jetex 30-degree bend piece, 2-inch piece on the original downpipes, welded that on, and then I've got a joining section there, and it goes into this KTM 250 EXC exhaust. Sounds really good, and it's just got some quite thick metal hangers there that allow the bike to, it kind of gives it that sort of like rally style, you know, a bit like the new Tenerés have got the exhaust there. It's really nice, yeah, I like it there, and it still sits plenty of clearance from the swing arm as well, so no issues with the pipe hitting the swing arm. Yeah, really cool. I like that. As I was saying, it's lifted 50mm from standard, and has an aftermarket rear suspension unit, which gives you a lot more ground clearance. Seat's pretty comfortable. I've done 3-hour trips on the bike. No issues whatsoever. A lot of people complain about the seats, but if you've ridden stuff like KTMs and, you know, more motocross type trail bikes, then you know that this seat is the sort of, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world at all. In comparison to some of those bikes, it's got some factory image fork sort of seal protectors there. It's like a foam type material. Seems to work alright. Bit annoying when it gets wet because it takes ages to dry out. I'm sure there's other bits and bobs that I've done to the bike. Okay, so anyway, these bikes suffer with a few common issues. Sadly, this bike's left me, since I owned it, stranded twice. It's not really any fault of the bike. This bike's done 20,000 miles, but it's more sort of the fault of its previous life, and perhaps it was a little bit neglected in terms of it always had oil changes and stuff, but other maintenance I found hadn't really been done to this bike. Oh, another thing that I've got on here is BMW R1200 GS pivoting foot pegs that I've notched to fit. They work really, really well, actually. They don't fold now, which is a bit annoying because obviously they were never made to fit this bike, but they work great, and as you can see, they're really in line with the rear brake. Brakes on this bike really, really good, we'll say that. Front brake especially, keep it maintained. You know, grease the sliders, take it apart every once in a while, clean it, grease it, all good, really good brakes. So common issues on these bikes. There's a Achilles heel on this bike, and it affects all the KLEs, I believe, even the facelifted KLEs. I mean, they stopped making these in about 2009, so this is a very early bike, and that is the flywheel. So this bike has currently got an electrics flywheel fitted that I had. It cost about £150. When I bought this bike, unbeknownst to me, the flywheel magnets had broken up, and it's a really common issue on these bikes. The flywheel magnets break up and then they smash your stator to pieces, and bits of metal go around the engine. You know, if you don't catch it, and potentially it could lead to engine failure, engine damage, and obviously, you know, it's going to leave you stranded at the side of the road when it takes the stator out. What happened with mine is the flywheel failed, and I fitted an electrics flywheel to it, but the original bolt that holds it in is a left-handed thread, and as it got halfway in, it decided very kindly to strip on me, so I had to drill out the crankshaft centre to fit a stud in there, which is now helicoiled stud conversion on there to a really strong stud and a nut that holds the flywheel in place, and I haven't had any issues with it since. But really frustrating that the threads seem to strip out. And if you look online, you'll see that the flywheel breaking up is a really, really, really common issue on these bikes. You'll notice it by the magnets are sort of spaced out on the flywheel when you take that cover off, and the glue starts to break up. It's really obvious. So if you buy one of these, doesn't matter what your flywheel looks like, if it looks in good condition or not, just change it for an electrics unit. There is some debate as to whether the electrics unit's as sort of good at charging the battery as the original flywheel, but I've ridden like 500 miles with the electrics unit on now, and I've had no issues with battery at all. So I really wouldn't worry about that. So that is, yeah, that's the main Achilles heel of this bike, and if that's not sorted, that will leave you stranded. And it sucks being stranded on a 200 kilo bike in the middle of nowhere. Other issues with this bike, common issues, they're getting a bit long in the tooth now. So Kawasaki's build quality was hit and miss at best. I've had a lot of old Kawasaki's and they all seem to have the same issues with really grotty connectors. Another issue that left me stranded is that there's a connector block under the petrol tank above the engine, and that left me stranded when one of the connectors, one of the wires in the connector broke off spontaneously because it was corroded, and immobilised the bike. So I had to, basically what I've done is redone the connectors and resoldered any sort of nasty wiring. But if you buy one of these again, especially an early one, then do check your wiring block under the tank isn't all corroded. Another issue that I hear about sometimes on these is that the ignition switch goes bad, and again that leaves you with a non-start situation. You know, you might get no lights on. But apart from that, they're really robust. I have heard a few people say that timing chains get slack, but again, I've not really experienced this on these GPZ500 derived engines. You know, maybe only through lack of maintenance or if you get unlucky, but I've not had that. And I've worked on a few of these GPZ derived engines in different bikes. They're in a few bikes. Another thing that I did was I got rid of, it has like a carburetor de-icing coolant pipe system from factory. Mine had all corroded out. It wasn't leaking, but the connectors were really rusty, so I bypassed it. I blocked off, there's a little passage, you can't see it from here, on the rocker cover. It's like a little pipe, metal pipe that bolts onto the rocker cover that allows coolant to circulate from the rocker cover to the carburetors and then back to this water pump. I blocked the connector off with chemical steel, and then put a tube over it to just 100% secure it. I've had no leaks since, and that's just bypassed off. Got rid of those carb de-icing. Unless you live in the, I mean, it's January at the moment, and when I went out this morning it was 2 degrees, and I've never had issues with carburetor icing at all. So I just fitted a generic what was it, 19mm I think coolant hose there that just goes straight to the radiator. Yeah, no issues whatsoever with that. Just saves the hassle really of, if you're out and about, the last thing you want is a little coolant pipe snapping off and then all your coolant leaking everywhere. But yeah, I mean, they're a good bike really. For the GPZ derived engines, about 50 horsepower, thereabouts I believe, probably a bit more with a carb tune and an aftermarket pipe. It's got loads of power for lanes. You don't really need, you don't need 100 horsepower adventure bike to go green laning. By choice, I'd probably, with some of the green lanes that I do, I'd probably have something a bit lighter, but 50 horsepower's plenty. It's sit at 70 mile an hour all day. It's got plenty of acceleration. It'll pull you out the mud on the right tyres without any issues whatsoever. It's quite a forgiving bike. A lot of people use these as like their first bike on the road. So yeah, it's easy to live with. Gear shift's a bit clunky, and the clutch basket on these is always a bit rattly, but just keep your gear linkage lubricated, and just look after it really, and it will look after you. As I say, apart from the issues that I've encountered, I don't really think there's much else that goes wrong with these bikes. They're relatively simple and easy to work on. One other thing I'd recommend if you're doing a lot of off-road is just replace the factory bash plate. I haven't got around to that yet, but as you can see, mine suffered a few dings, and they're quite thin. They're not really up to the job of protecting the engine from hitting rocks and stuff. So just another recommendation. But yeah, anyway, there's not much else to say about the bike really. As I was saying, you know, look after it and it'll look after you. It's a good all-round bike. It'll carry a passenger without any issues. It'll go on-road, off-road, do anything you want really. Pretty frugal as well. I get sort of 45-50 miles to the gallon for an old twin-cylinder carbureted bike. That's pretty good. So yeah, I would recommend the bike overall, but just make sure if you buy one of these, you do change the flywheel and you know, give everything a good check over before you start using it off-road, and you'll be fine. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and take care. Bye bye.